If you were to say to somebody, would you like a successful life? Most people, I'm sure, would say, yeah, I'd love to be successful. The key thing is like, what do we actually mean by successful? I think for many people, they think maybe it might mean, being successful might mean I'm famous. Maybe I'm a famous actor, famous sports person. Maybe the BBC hires me as a presenter and I'm a household name. Everybody knows my face, they see it in the newspapers. For other people, it might be success might be just living in a massive house, or it might be having a new BMW every 3 years, or a bigger private yacht. How we define success, I think, is very, very important. But what I'm going to talk about today really is another dimension to success. Every 3 or 4 months, I take a glance at either the Twitter or this morning the Instagram account of the school that I used to work for, and just find out how they're all getting along and what's happening there. Just to give some background, it's coming up to 4 years in November since I kind of quit rather than conforming with the biomedical fascism, tyranny, whatever you want to call it, that was going on in autumn of 2020. And it was the type of school it was. It was an all-girls private boarding school in deepest, darkest Surrey, And the thing that you have to understand, a couple of things about private schools in Britain, is that they're financially selective rather than kind of academically selective. And there's a sort of a strict pecking order. Something that I invented was like an analogy with football, like there's a pyramid in England, Premier League being at the top, and you talk about different levels: Championship, League One, League Two, National League North, blah 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 blah, Northern Premier League. And it's sort of the same with private schools, and most people have got no idea about how British society operates, because they have no idea of what goes on in Premier League and Championship level private schools in Britain. Most I don't know, people who are, mum and dad are GPs or hospital consultants, they won't tend to send their kids to a Premier League or a Championship level private school, because they just don't move in the right circles. They're just and they probably, even they won't be able to afford it. You're talking fees of well over 30 grand a year. So if you've got to add tax onto that, you're talking about earning maybe, I don't know, £50,000 before tax to be able to afford the school fees, and that's just with one kid. So these people, they are part of the big club, 100%. And what I'm going to talk about today is kind of what these people are about, and whether these people have actually signed away something very, very important, which is their souls. But before I get onto that, let's just talk about what I saw this morning. So there were these two girls. One of them's called Caroline Steele, and she works for the BBC World Service, and she goes out and about to places like Borneo and does reports all about, I'm going to use the code phrase here, Jill Bates. And what Jill's doing with his like medical experiments and stuff, the old ouchies that might go in the shoulder or in the bum. So I'll just flash an image of this person up now. Yeah, so you see what she's like. You wouldn't know her from, if you saw her on the tube or something in London, you wouldn't look twice. And this reminds me of you know, this phrase that was coined in connection with Albert Eichmann, you know, the guy that was the mastermind behind putting into practice the Nazi genocide of the Jews. He was actually tried at the end of World War II, and he was one of the few that actually got executed. And they used to call it, anyway, they looked at Al Eichmann, he was like looked like a bureaucrat, just like a nobody, right? And they coined this phrase, the banality of evil. So I think you can look at this face. I'll put her up again, Caroline Steele. Yeah, and it looks like the banality of evil. Am I being harsh here? Well, this person's writing, producing media for the BBC that's presumably very positive about what Jill Bates is doing in other parts of the world to young kids. So, you know, there's two options, isn't there? The first option is that she's completely moronic and she doesn't really understand what's going on. Now, I don't, from my memory, I don't think I actually taught this person economics, and I think they did like mostly physics and stuff like that. Now, often, you know, physicists, they're just speeded up computers, aren't they? They're organic computers, straight line thinkers. So probably easier to trick somebody like that who's a straight line thinker than it is to trick somebody who you know, is more like me or you, who kind of saw through the medical experiment when they were rolling it out in 2021. And the other option is that she's just chosen to look the other way, hasn't she? You know, it's like it's too scary to kind of look at. It's like, and then it's just very easy, I suppose, to fit in to just kind of claim that anybody who's saying that Jill Bates is anything other than saving humanity is a tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist. But the point I'm getting to here is that I think very politely you could call these people sellouts. And what matters to these people more than anything else is a fancy job title. You know, working for the BBC will go down very well in the sort of circles that she mixes in. It will impress the people that she hangs out with and her ex-school friends, and because it's prestigious, you see. And I dare say she probably gets paid a fairly good salary as well from people's taxes. Another thing that I've just thought about now is just the reputation of the BBC and what type of person could actually consider working for the BBC, given the horrendous things that have happened at the BBC over the last 10 years. I saw something very, very interesting on Twitter this morning about somebody confronting some BBC journalists. And the thing to look at here is how they avoid eye contact, which suggests to me that these people are sellouts in that they know exactly what the BBC stands for. They know exactly what type of organisation they're working for. So have a quick look at this.
Excuse me, are you Seema Sakinga? Did you just refer to child abuse imagery as being child porn? Did you refer to child abuse imagery as being child porn?
This journalist, you can guarantee that she'll also have been a private schooling.
Porn stars then. Don't touch me again. Don't touch me.
You're trying to push over the barrier. You're trying to push over the barrier.
I'm having to shout. Why did you call it child porn? Why did you call it child porn?
Are you able to intervene?
Fluttering on me. Okay, just
Get out of the way then.
wow.
Get out of the way. Why did you call it child porn in your interview?
These people know exactly what they're
Because that's
doing.
what the BBC thinks of it.
Now, the other thing that I'll say is that I didn't really know any. I went to a state school myself. I didn't really understand about these Premier League and Championship level private schools until I started working in one. Just actually, most people, as I say, have got no idea about what these people are like. But from what I saw, it's the world that they inhabit is actually quite a cruel world. It's quite tough, hyper competitive. Competitive can be good, but in this case, it's kind of, I think it's kind of bad. It's most of these kids there, they have troubles. They have troubles. They have self-doubts, and all they want, it'll just like they're seeking approval. And the type of approval that they're seeking is based around whether they've got a brand new BMW or not, or how big their house is, or whether they've got a fancy job title, and that's all that they ever think about, really. It's very, very different from certainly the world that I inhabit, and I'm guessing yours too. Second person that I came across, I think this was on their Instagram feed, was this other student that I did teach for 1 year, somebody called Seren. So again, from my point of view, fairly unremarkable student, really. But somehow this person has managed to get a gig writing at the Times newspaper. And one of the things that she writes about is global climate boiling change. Now, is she indoctrinate? Does she really believe that? Does she really believe in what she's writing? Or is she just turning a blind eye to the truth in order to keep her, because it must be a prestigious job to have, to be working at the Times. Do you know what I mean? It's like, must be quite prestigious and probably fairly decently paid. But again, it's all about this sort of keeping up with appearances. It's all about ego and status. Like, she'll think that she's arrived because she's got a gig writing about nonsense at the Times newspaper. So is it possible that somebody like that, could be tricked into writing nonsense for the Times? Or can we conclude that this person actually is just sold their soul, in return for materialistic trinkets? The question I've got is, do these people sort of think beyond the material world? Do they actually think about what they're doing? For example, pushing this net zero agenda. This has led to rising energy bills, and as a result of that, certain that old people in Britain are going to die. So those deaths are going to be on the shoulders of pumping out this global climate warming change propaganda. So another thing to talk about is this, something that I talk about quite a bit, is this concept of blaming people like Klaus Schwab and Keir Starmer and all the rest of it. And kind of assuming that if we just change these people, the whole world will change for the better. If we just put a new group of politicians and global leaders in place, these people will be less corrupt, and they'll pursue an agenda that's not anti-human. For me, that's just hopelessly naive. The real cause of the problems that we're suffering is what I would call low-level enablers. These are the people. These are people that the allure of material possessions and job titles and egos and don't you know who I am? I'm very important. You're just nothing. In fact, but anyway, You know, talking about low-level enablers, you know, if you think about what's been going on with two-tier Kia and the policing and stuff, that's who's actually responsible for that. Imagine if the police, every single police officer was a moral, decent person and decided not to comply with two-tier policing. You know, like what would happen? Well, it just wouldn't happen, would it? Stalin wouldn't be able to impose his powers. I'll just show this apple tree. Beautiful. Big apples. You know, same would apply with people that work for the November Hotel Sierra. People like General Pusher, you know, drug pusher. Pay attention to the initials, General Pusher. This guy called Darryl that I know, who's up in, or I knew. What's he about? He's about the same thing, you know. He must know his dietary advice was crap, was killing people. He must have known that the live action role play was as fake as anything. He must have known that the medical experiment was killing people. But what did he do? He just went along with it, didn't he? He sold his soul again. And what did he sell his soul for? His job title. That was like very important to him. You know, oh, I'm a general pusher. Look at it. I've got it on my debit card. You know, the initial dog. I don't know. You can you know that one. D and what's the other letter? R, little r with a full stop after it. Yeah, that's what he was into. Plus his money, he'll have a swanky car, goes on Instagrammable holidays, and that's what matters to this guy. It's all about ego, status, and consuming materialistic goods and services that he can kind of brag about, so he hopes that other people will look up to him because of who he is and what he consumes. This guy definitely has sold out. But you know, these others, obviously politicians are probably the lowest of the low. You know, what type of person goes into politics? You know, it's somebody who can't make it in the private sector where exchange is voluntary. You know, they have to go down the route of compelled exchange and joining the club that's in charge of imposing legalised violence on people who have no real choice but to conform with whatever they say. Some people get off on that power, but what have they done? They've sold their souls, haven't they? I think the same sort of point would I think a lot of teachers got compromised in 2020, 2021. They should have spoke out, but they didn't choose a moral course of action. What they did was that they used their free will to just make excuses and choose the broad path, the path of least resistance, and you know, go along with what could only be described as pure evil. To sort of sum things up, one thing that I kind of struggle with is this philosophy of sort of selling out, really. You know, in that I've never been particularly motivated by ego, status, or money. Like, I drive a 30-year-old car. I think it's no, it's not 30. It's 25 years old actually. And I remember I bought it probably when it was about 9 years old, and I was working at that school at that time. And I remember I used to run the young enterprise kind of scheme, and I remember this guy. He was like he was like a parent, but he was acting as one of the advisors. And I remember this guy trying to take the PISS out of me because I drove like a 10 or 11-year-old car. And I just remember to myself thinking at the time, like, is he seriously like trying to take the thingamajig out of me because I drive an old car? It's like, and he was. But again, for me, I just don't really understand this. You know, and for me, the thing that I think is invaluable is just integrity. And I think about these people, you know, these students and general pushers and the police and politicians and loads of other people, and I think I can't really understand their perspective on life. It's a very, very narrow perspective, and I would imagine most of them have got to be atheists to kind of behave like that, because, you know, I guess if you're an atheist, you don't believe in God, so you think you can probably get away with it. There's going to be no comebacks when you die for what you chose to do or what you chose not to see and pretend that wasn't there. So kind of rounding things off, what I do believe is obviously that God exists, and God allows us to be tempted by Satan. And how we react to those temptations is very, very, very important. You know, as I say before, that phrase, never mind Black Lives Matter, it's more eternal lives matter. What you do down here on earth matters hugely. And every single day we're tested. Just one anecdote. Last week I went and bought my ice hockey season ticket, and I had my headphones on, you know. I'd cycled down there, so when I got to the office, I of course took my headphones off, switched off my MP3 player, but I was still a bit spaced out. Anyway, I paid for the season ticket. It's like €169 it was. And at the time I wasn't quite sure, you know, I was a bit disorientated. Anyway, when I got back home, I looked at the receipt and I realised that she'd given me €11 change when she should have only given me €1 change. So what did I do? I kind of thought about it and I thought, I've got to go back. So I went back to the next day and gave her the €10 back. I'm not bragging about this here, just something that's really freaky. Then that was on Thursday, I think. Then on Saturday, I was at the supermarket with my wife, and my wife was doing some stuff, and you know, I quite like to go have a look at the stuff that I'm interested in while she's looking at the other stuff. And anyway, there's this girl, and she's probably like mid-20s, quite an attractive blonde lady, and she dropped a big pile of cash, and that again was a test. So I just picked it up, immediately gave it to her. How we react to these tests matters massively. So these two tests of my honesty happened in quick succession. I was being tempted, definitely. So there's a section about temptation in the Bible that Jesus himself was, God allowed him to be tested by the devil. So this is in Matthew chapter 3, verse 4. So it says, Jesus was then led away by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. For 40 days and nights he fasted, and at the end of them he was famished. The tempter approached him and said, "If you are the Son of God, tell these stones to become bread." Jesus answered, "Scripture says, man cannot live on bread alone. He lives on every word that God utters." The devil then took him to the holy city and set him on the parapet of the temple. "If you are the Son of God," he said, "throw yourself down. For Scripture says, he will put his angels in charge of you, and they will support you in their arms for fear you should strike your foot against a stone." Jesus answered him, "Scripture says again, you are not to put the Lord your God to the test." Once again the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world in their glory. "All these," he said, I will give you, if you will only fall down and do me homage." But Jesus said, "Begone, Satan. Scripture says, you shall do homage to the Lord your God and worship him alone." Then the devil left him, and angels appeared and waited on him. So the point here is that if Jesus was, God allowed Jesus to be tested by Satan, it's a pretty good guess that we'll all be tested. And what matters is how we respond. So, you know, what's worth more to you, like a new car or some fancy job title, or being able to brag about, I don't know, working for the BBC or show, I don't know, it's weird. Or is your soul more important? So that's all I want to say today. So I think there was I've not watched it, but I think Hugo Talks has done a video. Is it possible to sell your soul to the devil? I definitely believe it is. I think it is. And it's not just Bob Dylan, and I think some sports people have done it. You know, you see these I've seen this a couple of times, miraculous like transformations in people, and they suddenly become like people you thought were pretty average who kind of made it. I don't know. Did they sell out? I'm not sure. Music, obviously. Politicians. I don't watch Hugo Talks, so it's a bit... I don't want to go and visit his website and stuff like that. But yeah, I think it definitely does exist. And that's all I want to say today. So God bless.